40 years ago, in the heart of downtown Calgary, members of the Baptist Church crossed paths with someone experiencing homelessness. Moved by compassion, they felt called to serve and gave him a hot meal and a warm place to stay. From that moment of humble beginnings, the mustard seed took root.
Since then, we have helped thousands of people make positive changes in their lives, as we've expanded our programs and services to 7 cities across Western Canada. Over the years, we've walked alongside countless individuals providing shelter, housing, food, clothing, health and wellness support, employment assistance, and more. We meet our community where they're at and work to provide resources to improve their lives.
The mustard seed is a place of resilience. It's hope grown.
You know, I'd say one of the larger challenges is people don't know who you are. Who is the mustard seed? And so it was very important for us to say, this is who we are. This is who the mustard seed is. And to try to live that day in and day out and to build those key relationships.
It's hard to pinpoint exactly when the mustard seed began. Like most seeds, it took just the right combination of circumstances to sprout. For us, that was when 4 men came across a man experiencing homelessness in downtown Calgary and decided to bring him in for a hot meal and give him a safe bed to sleep in. These men were part of a ministry running in the basement of the First Baptist Church on 4th Street called the Burning Bush Coffee House. It was a casual place for people to go to warm up, grab a coffee, and discuss the gospel. The most important thing harbored in the basement of the Burning Bush Coffee House, though, was a strong sense of community and belonging. As time went on, Burning Bush realized that while they were an excellent source of community and had brought people together, they weren't doing quite enough to meet the needs of those experiencing homelessness and poverty. So they set out to do more, and the mustard seed was born with the church purchasing a house, the Koinonia House, to begin operations out of. We opened this house on November 25th, 1984. Koinonia is a term that means the Christ Fellowship, or body of believers. And the mustard seed was operated as a street church, by street people, for street people. Here's Byron Bradley, who has worked for the seed for 20 plus years.
I just want to interject really quickly because I feel like even it's interesting to speak with somebody who you've been around long enough that you can remember what it was like when we used to have the shelter down here. So would you mind walking us through like just what that process was like? Like what was it like to run the shelter space in 102? Like what did the process look like to day to day?
Yeah, we had, I think it was 82, 85 people that slept on the floor. The ladies were in the back corner. We'd set up kind of a pseudo wall with tables in the back corner for them. And yeah, people would line up outside, and if you had a bed the night before, you'd get a bed the following night, kind of like what we still do today. But we didn't have radios. There was 2 or 3 staff working. So looking back, I go, my goodness, that when I tell some of the staff today, like we didn't have radios and there was only, a ratio, there's 2 of us for 85 people. So the folks would come in and at 8 o'clock at night and line up, and we bring them in. We'd find ourselves in some fairly interesting situations inside the front door there. People were actually allowed to smoke right inside the door in the front area, which we don't allow anymore, as we know that those rules have changed over the years across society, and got in some interesting situations in those front doors. And then we would screen them, and there was volunteers, as they are today, where like I remember reporting to some volunteer leads, and they would tell the staff like, hey, you're on showers tonight. So we had showers in the basement. People would store their bags downstairs, and then the floor would be clear of all the tables, and we'd have mats on the floor. So yeah, we'd serve about 8 people, and then the overnight staff also, we didn't have a food services team, and so the shelter staff did all the cooking. And so I would look for a couple of guest volunteers. They'd wake up at 4:45, 5 in the morning, we'd start cooking, and we'd serve breakfast to everybody the next morning. And then we'd get anywhere from 200 to 500 people for lunch on the main floor, and anywhere from 400 to 700 people for dinner, 365 days a year. And the lineup at times would go down to the end of like around the corner and all the way down the block. So yeah, lots going on back in that time. One of the other memories that kind of sticks out is sitting and eating meals with our guests and volunteers all around the same table. That was critical. We're making those close connections with our guests, getting to see them as people made in the image of God, and you understand that this is someone's mom, dad, brother, sister, son, daughter, and there's not much different from me to them, right? And so building those relationships, sitting at a table and eating meals with them was an honor and a blessing to be able to get to know a lot of the guests. I still have some relationships today in my life from some folks that were our guests 21 years ago, and a couple of them have been off the streets for years, and a few of them have actually become very close personal friends of mine. And so it's been incredible to see just that growth and that transition through their lives.
Homelessness. It's a word that carries a lot of weight. But what does it really mean? At its core, homelessness is not having access to safe, stable, and appropriate housing, and it can look different for everyone. When most people think about homelessness, they picture someone sleeping on the street, in a park, or in a car. This is often called sleeping rough. Others might be living in tents or makeshift shelters. But homelessness isn't always visible. Some people couch surf, moving from one friend's or family member's place to another, never really having a place to call their own. When these folks come through our doors, we meet them where they're at. You'll notice we say that a lot around here. Our mission is to bring hope and well-being to our most vulnerable community members, sharing the love of Christ along the way. And a big part of that is creating a sense of belonging, because having a community to lean on can change everything. But before anything else, we focus on meeting basic needs, because without those, it's nearly impossible for someone to move forward. Food, water, shelter, and clothing are the essentials we typically all think of, but basic needs go far beyond that. Access to healthcare, hygiene items, transportation, laundry, communication, education, and even insurance. These are all crucial parts of survival and dignity in today's society. By meeting these needs, we create a foundation for real change, and from there, we can start building a future together. At the heart of what we do is respect and empathy. That's why the language we use matters. You'll often hear us refer to the people who access our services as clients or guests, not as homeless people. We use person-first language, saying people experiencing homelessness instead. Why? Well, because homelessness is something someone is going through. It doesn't define who they are as a person. This small shift in language reminds us that every person has worth, dignity, and a story behind their current situation. Words matter, and by choosing them with care, we reinforce the compassion that guides everything we do. Meet Caleb Brown, part of our community engagement team. His role is to bring people together. Caleb works with local schools and churches, helping them connect with our organization and learn more about the work we do. Whether it's through education, partnerships, or hands-on involvement, he's building bridges that strengthen our community every single day. Here's Caleb now on why person-first language matters.
Okay, so there's different ways that we can use person-first language. So an example of person-first language is there are people who are experiencing homelessness here in Calgary. A few other examples are there are people who are experiencing poverty in my neighborhood. Instead of referring to someone as an addict, we can say there are people who are struggling with addictions or people who are struggling with substance misuse. There are lots of ways that we can do that, and I always tell people words are really powerful. Our language has the potential to lift people up or tear them down, and we can lift people up, I think, by using person-first language. We've all been conditioned with our language, the way we speak. We've learned how to use that language from somewhere. And I always tell people, you know what, we've all used identity-first language. We've all called someone homeless. We've all referred to them as homeless people. And that's not terrible, but there's a better way to do that, and that's person first. I love talking about neural pathways in our brain and how they, over time, these neural pathways are created. And we are taught something, and that over time gets cemented in us, and it's a way of thinking, it's a way of doing or being that is just cemented in who we are and what we do. When we use person-first language, I think that's actually one way we can correct those things that we've been taught. And we create new pathways of speaking, of viewing people, and person first language is one way that we can change the narrative.
So you sent a list of vocab that you guys use in seed school. I know you don't do seed school, but I was gonna ask if you could explain a few of them. So person first language was one of them, and I wanted to ask if you could explain what rough sleeping is.
So people who are sleeping rough or living rough is another way that we talk about it. So these are people who might be sleeping in a car. They might be sleeping in a park somewhere outside usually, but people who are sleeping in a car would also be considered rough sleepers. These are people who are not sleeping in shelters, and they're not sleeping in homes or hospitals or hotels. So primarily people living outside. Here in Calgary, we have seen a huge increase of rough sleepers over the years. I used to live downtown, and in the few years I lived downtown, I saw that increase in real time. I'd be walking through a park on my way to work, and I would see more and more people in that park. Usually you'll see someone with a tent set up or tarps set up in the neighborhood. People will make a little home out of whatever they have. Oftentimes you find people alongside of a river or somewhere that has a shelter if there's a bridge, because there's privacy, or if it's raining, they can have cover from the rain. So yeah, those are people that are living rough. I always tell people it's so important that we don't make assumptions of why someone is sleeping rough, because we just don't know. We don't know who they are. We don't know the last 24 hours of that person's life. We don't know the last 20 years of their life. We don't know what their childhood was like. And so when we see someone living rough, again, this goes back to those gut responses we have when we see people. Is our gut response an assumption or a judgment about that person, or is it compassion? Is it, how can I support this person? Why do I feel this way about this person? Do I feel like fear or judgment? Like, why am I feeling that about this person I don't know? I think those are really important questions that we should ask ourselves. And from there, how can I feel compassion and support towards this person?
Welcome to Shelter Take. As you know, people experiencing homelessness and poverty are just that, people. They're humans living lives just like you and me. When asked what one good thing was that happened to them recently, they said,
"Well, I'm having a good cup of coffee right now.
I've just got a Timbit."
Amazing.
I had a cortisone shot, and I think it might work. My knee.
I was out with my daughter, having coffee.
Yeah? What was good about it?
Just seeing her and just talking to her.
Yeah?
Yeah,
How often do you guys see each other usually?
once a week.
That's nice. How
Yeah.
old is your daughter?
She's 31.
31?
Yeah.
What's she doing?
She works at Co-op.
Nice.
Yeah,
Well,
and Timmy's actually,
Yeah.
but
well, how was your day together? How's your time together?
it's good, good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
Probably seeing my daughter too, to be honest with you.
How old is your daughter?
She's 5.
Oh, wow. That's such a cute age.
Yeah, she just turned 5 on the October 23rd.
Oh, happy belated birthday to your daughter. Did you guys do anything?
Took her to the park and, gave her some candy and stuff. She was happy.
I'm living, and I'm alive, and I have good friends, and yeah, I'm happy to be here.
So the mustard seed, I don't know exactly when the name came about, but the story goes that the founders of the mustard seed were reading the Bible, and in the Bible there are 2 parables actually that Jesus tells about a mustard seed. And a parable just means story. And so the first story, it's about a farmer who plants a seed in a field. Over time, that seed grows, and that seed is a mustard seed, and it's described as a really small seed. Over time, that seed grows into a really large tree, and that tree provides nest for birds and shade for people. And so something that started really small and almost seemed insignificant grew into this thing that provided for creation. And so the founders of the mustard seed, being faith-based Christians, they read that story and they thought, you know what, that is like the mustard seed. We started really small, We started with Pat Nixon, a 13 or 14-year-old boy. He was given a home, and that has turned into an organization in 7 cities in Western Canada, providing shade, providing that shelter for people and food for people. So that's why we're called the Mustard Seed. And we do not make mustard. That is a question I often get from schools, from the youth that we speak to. They always want to know, where's the mustard? Where do you get your mustard from? And we're like, we don't do that.
Today, our reach extends across 7 cities in Western Canada: Calgary, Edmonton, Red Deer, Medicine Hat, Grand Prairie, Kamloops, and most recently, Saskatoon. In each of these communities, we provide a wide range of essential services. With over 700 staff members and an incredible 95,000 volunteer hours each year, we are part of thousands of people's stories. It's incredible to see how far we've come from our humble beginnings at the Burning Bush. Back in 1992, we recognized the need for more space and made the move to an old Northern Electric warehouse in the center of downtown Calgary. It was a building that had once been taken over by the Canadian government in 1942. This location on what became known as Volunteer Way marked a pivotal moment for us. We officially launched shelter services, offering 82 mats on the floor each night, with every guest getting a hot breakfast in the morning. At the same time, something remarkable was happening in Edmonton. A youth group from Central Baptist Church had started similar work, serving the vulnerable community of Macaulay under the name The Mustard Seed. Through connections in the Baptist Church community, our 2 organizations found each other, and eventually we merged, joining forces to serve more people in need. But our work doesn't stop at shelters. Like we always say, we believe in meeting people where they're at, which is why we also operate community impact centers. These spaces foster connection, belonging, and practical support in key neighborhoods like Marlborough in Calgary, Belvedere in Edmonton, and downtown Kamloops, to name a few. One of the people leading this work is Eric McComish, site lead at our Downtown Community Impact Center in Calgary, in that same warehouse building on Volunteer Way. He works directly with clients every day, helping to create a space where people feel seen, supported, and cared for. Here's Eric now speaking to the impact these centers are making.
Okay, so tell me about your job. What is a day in the life?
On a technical level, like my site lead position is making sure that our facility and all the programs within our facility, whether it's staff, volunteer-led, that everything runs smoothly. But a day at the Mustard Seed would probably look like hanging out with guests, having meaningful conversations, crisis intervention, and meeting people's basic needs in a tangible way is probably what I would say. The purpose of the 102 building, specifically in the winter, is to have a warm place to stay during the day. So our building at the 102 is open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And we do a variety of things here for guests that come in. At the front of our 102, we will have basic needs. So like we have bag lunches, we have hygiene items, we have socks, underwear, basic clothing like t-shirts, pants, anything along those lines. So people can come in at the front and we can provide them with what they need. We can give them a bag lunch. We also serve coffee in the morning and evening here. In the winter, we serve a hot lunch Monday to Friday. We have other programs that run. We have employment coaches that help people with resumes, things like that here. And then we also have food bank here where people apply to pick up food from our location at the 102. We have a computer lab that runs during the week. Volunteers run our computer lab so they can access resources online. We have chaplaincy here, so we have drop-in Bible studies. Sometimes we have counselors that people can meet with here at the 102. So we do a lot of stuff depending on the day, but we try and meet people's needs in a tangible way would probably be the best way to word it.
What attracted you to apply to work at the Mustard Seed?
What attracted me the most about working at the Mustard Seed, specifically at the 102 building, at the street level position, was being able to interact with guests face to face. and being able to actually be involved in their life every day. And being able, I think the biggest thing for me personally was being able to provide people with help. That's not just sending them somewhere else, like, oh, go here for, they could help you with this. I mean, we do a lot of that, but like I wanted to be able to actually help people in my day-to-day job. And sometimes it's just as small as having a quick like 2-minute conversation, and sometimes it's as small as like giving them a bag lunch, but sometimes it's a lot bigger, like helping out somebody that's having a crisis and being able to intervene at very important moments in their life. So I think short answer is being able to help people in real ways that you can see was what attracted me to work here.
Have you always wanted to help people? Has that always been part of like your personhood?
I would say yeah. So I used to be a pastor, and I think one of the things that kind of drew me towards the mustard seed after stepping down from being a pastor was being a pastor. We have a lot of spiritual conversations, we pray for people, we do a lot of stuff along those lines. But a lot of the times, well, shout out to pastors. I'm not going to try and hate on them or anything, but a lot of the times I feel like you don't really see a lot of tangible, like, you just like send people away after talking to them and hope that something's happening like internally, and who knows, whatever you believe in that. But what happens at the mustard seed, I think, in a lot of ways is like being able to physically see that what you're doing is helpful, even in little ways. Even so, like for instance, like we had a guest that comes in and we just gave them lunch every day. And that's really the only interaction I've ever had with them. They were severely addicted to drugs. They had a lot of stuff going on mentally. And they just came in about 3 months ago, and they've been sober for 68 days, and they have housing. And they brought up the fact that personally to me, they said, oh, thank you for all the help that you've done in my life. And I was like, well, I haven't really done anything. And then they said, no, you don't understand like what somebody just noticing me when I come in the door and saying hi and saying my name and then giving me a lunch every day. Because a lot of the times it's the only lunch that they had to eat. And they said, you don't understand like what that actually meant for me and people seeing me as a person. So I think in a lot of ways, like working at the Mustard Seed, you get to encourage people and remind them of who they are. That's why I work here. Yeah.
What are some of the biggest challenges the organization faces today, in your opinion, and how are you working to address them?
Yeah, so when I hear that question, my mind goes right away to the challenges that people are facing in society, because our mission is to build hope and well-being for our most vulnerable citizens through Jesus' love. And so my mind goes to the barriers, the mountains, what seems to be completely hopeless situations that many people in society are facing today. And so a couple of those big ones that many of us obviously are aware of and many of us unfortunately are impacted by is the cost of living, which includes food insecurity, affordable housing, and the very complex challenges that come along with mental health and addictions. And so as an organization, I'm so honored to be a part of an organization that is literally making a dent, a very large dent in these areas in people's lives across 7 different cities. The one thing that I take zero credit because have nothing to do with housing, in 2023, 600 people moved into housing. In the first 11 months of 2024, as I don't have the full stats aren't out yet for 2024, so through 11 months, 1,211 people moved from our shelters or moved through support from the street into housing. That's more than double. And so by the end of December of last year, there'll be over 1,300 people that we help move into housing. Like, that is incredible. To my understanding, there's nobody else in Canada that's doing this. And so to be a part of an organization that is aggressively not only building, but supporting people to get into sustainable housing situations, many of which have on-site supports, that is literally changing the lives of individuals and families across Western Canada. That's exciting. 813,000 meals last year across the first 11 months. And that's not just a meal at a shelter, that's also a hamper. That's a school lunch program in Red Deer where 700 to 800 fresh lunches get delivered every single school day to 40 plus schools. That's at different holidays like Easter and Thanksgiving. In some of our cities, we do like holiday hampers for families that includes like pots and pans and stuff, and like some pretty cool stuff around the meals. Partnerships that we have, for instance, like one with H&R Block, where they come in and do tax returns for probably thousands of our clients every year, helping people file their taxes. And there's been a number of stories of people that hadn't done their taxes in like many years and getting some pretty sizable returns that were life-changing returns for them because they'd never had anybody help them with their taxes. And then another thing that sticks out in my mind in terms of talking about the complexities of mental health and addictions, over 54,000 health and wellness activities went on last year. So whether that's sitting down with a wellness advocate that is just like a plethora of connections and relationships in the community and can help them with so many different barriers, or maybe that's sitting down with a counselor either on staff or a student who's maybe taken their graduate degree in counseling and volunteering their time, partnering with a post-secondary organization, or an occupational therapist that specializes with mental health and barriers to daily living. They're kind of like the Swiss Army knife of healthcare and work really great with our population. And so, you know, you can't be all things to all people, but just to see the maturity and the growth of the mustard seed and to see how we have practically addressed these very difficult things that people are facing in our world, and an increasing number are facing day in and day out because we continue to see new faces often. It's pretty cool to be a part of an organization that is taking tangible steps towards turning lives around by not only the hundreds, but the thousands across our country. That is an incredible group to be a part of.
You've been listening to Hope Grown, a podcast from the Mustard Seed. We hope today's episode gave you a deeper understanding of who we are as an organization. But this is just the beginning. Coming up this season on Hope Grown, we're taking you behind the scenes of our frontline work, sharing powerful personal stories, and introducing you to the people making a difference every day. In our next episode, we'll explore the impact we're making together in Edmonton, Alberta. Make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and for more stories of transformation or to find out how you can get involved, visit theseed.ca. Thank you for listening.